Hello and welcome to the CNBC Africa special. My name is Fifi Peters. It's been a bittersweet week for shareholders of Anglo American Platinum. The mining company reported soaring profits, a record dividend, and if that wasn't enough, awarded its shareholders with a special dividend. It also announced that the man who was at the forefront of putting the shine back onto the balance sheet, Chris Griffith, would be resigning as CEO. I caught up with Chris the day he announced his exit and asked him about the highs, the lows, and where he was headed to next.
The fact is, I think the company's in a really good shape. All the restructuring and repositioning of the business that we needed to do over the last 7 years, I think is largely done. So there is a new wave of strategy for the company, and I think this is probably a good time for a new leader to own that and to take that forward. I'm taking a bit of a leap of faith because I don't have anything lined up just yet, but I'm going to see what else is out there. I think I'm ready for a new challenge. I've still got lots of energy and still lots of, I think, potential to take on another big role. So looking forward to what life may still have to throw at me.
I mean, you're still young, you haven't reached the formal retirement age in South Africa, but of course, Chris, your exit comes at a time when many listed companies are losing their CEOs for a whole host of reasons, some being pressured to leave, some just quitting as a result of disputes in the boardroom. Is your exit tied to anything like that?
So no, I think you can see by the set of results that we announced today that the board, with a record set of results, with record safety, with record all sorts of things, that this is not the board kicking me out because we've underdelivered. I think the company has gone from strength to strength over this period of time. I don't have any disputes with either the board or the major shareholder. So I think we're in good shape.
This next opportunity that you are pursuing, will it still be in the mining industry?
Well, I haven't pursued anything yet. So I resign officially I step down as the CEO from the AGM halfway through April. So we've still got quite a bit to do. I've got I think a nice handover period with the incumbent, which is still to be announced. And then I will put myself out there. I'll start talking to people and see what may be available.
I mean, should an opportunity arise within the mining industry, perhaps at a higher level than you are currently at, global CEO of Anglo American, is this something that you'd consider?
So I think I will consider all sorts of things now going forward, and it doesn't only have to be in the mining industry. It could be outside of the mining industry, and it could be one of any things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a bigger company. It could be a company that just offers different experiences or may have different challenges. So I think I'm just keeping an open mind as to what will be next. But I think the very fortunate thing is I'm not pressured to rush out and get something, say, in the first month. I've got a little bit of time to be able to evaluate some opportunities. But I am looking at, I think it's still, life has got lots of opportunities and we don't always know exactly where they're coming from.
Just talking about your 7.5 years within the current role, you came in the aftermath of the Marikana massacre. You presided over the longest strike within South Africa's platinum industry. Quite a lot of volatility by way of policy in the mining industry, and of course there was the unfortunate incident with the buffalo. But what would you say was your most testing moment as a CEO of Anglo Platinum?
Look, when I came back into the business, the industry was probably about 60% loss-making. We, in Anglo Platinum, we had just been recapitalized, so the market had put another 10 billion rand back into this company to save it. Very quickly, by 2014, we were almost back at 15 billion rand in debt again. This was a company fast going out of business. And whilst nobody ever thought that could have been the case, you saw subsequently other platinum companies that went out of business because they kept losing money. So we were fast going out of business. It was a very, very traumatic time in the industry on the aftermath of Marikana. It was very difficult with new unions and we needed to, in our own business, we had at least 50% of our business was loss-making. And we needed to turn that round. Unfortunately, some of the very tough things we had to do, we had to shut mines down, we had to fix other mines, and then mines that were still making money but were grossly inefficient. We had to turn all that round. And so the things I hated the most were having to retrench people, having to shut mines down. But we needed to do that so that we could save the company and at one point in time in the future, hopefully start employing people again. And so over that period, we have restructured the business, we took 60% of our overheads out at the time. And from a peak of debt of almost 15 billion rand, today we announced a cash position of 17.3 billion. So just in 5 years, we have turned the cash position of this company around by over 32 billion rand. So that's a great story, but it required very, very difficult things. And of course, I didn't do that alone. I had a great team around me, great people in Anglo Platinum, and a great board that were actually willing to support some of those very tough things that we needed to do. But I think we did that. I think we turned around pretty much everything we were doing in the business. Just to give you a sense, way back in 2007, this company had 25 fatalities. Today we were able to announce that we had zero fatalities in our managed operations for the first time ever. So, I think that is probably my biggest success, is to say that we sent every person home to their families.
So a whole lot of good news that you have been able to preside over, Chris. But my question around the turnaround that we have seen in Anglo Platinum is, how much of it would you say was as a result of the tough decisions that you did have to make by way of cutting jobs, by way of scaling back on production? And how much of this turnaround was assisted by the current commodity prices, metal prices specifically that you mine, going berserk?
So I think probably 60–70% of the turnaround came from the position we find ourselves now because of the tough choices we had to make. Had we continued oversupplying the market with loss-making production, we wouldn't have got to a position where there were deficits in the market, where there was growth, where people had confidence that they could get platinum group metals if we were all going to go out of business. So I think that there's great confidence in the market, expecting that we as producers can produce. Now, we wouldn't have been able to get to that position if we hadn't made those tough choices. We would not have been in this position, in my view. So this was not just a cyclical turnaround. It was not just a cycle that we just had to wait long enough and it would have all come right. There were structural changes to demand at the time, so demand had disappeared. It wasn't just that the market had got a bit weaker. And we needed to make those tough choices. Mines that were oversupplying the market with loss-making production needed to be shut down. Mines that we didn't think we could fix needed to be shut. We needed to take overheads out of the business. We needed to change the way that we were doing things. We needed to change the way we were marketing our business. We needed to change the way that we were enabling demand for PGMs, so investing in demand for PGMs. And some of that demand we're seeing coming through now.
And talking about the PGM market and the demand and the supply dynamics currently, how sustainable do you think the current run in prices are? Or do you think we're steadily reaching that point where the run that we have seen is overdone?
So I think important to note is the run that we've seen has not been driven by speculation. The run that we've seen in prices is because these markets are in deficit. So the palladium market is in deficit, the rhodium market is in deficit, just meaning the demand is greater than the supply. And that demand is coming predominantly from the automotive sector, and that's coming from a desire to reduce emissions going into the atmosphere. And that pressure is not about to reduce. So we're likely to see more pressure from regulators and from society saying to governments and industry, we want you to clean up and put less emissions into the atmosphere. And the way to do that is to use PGMs. And so palladium and rhodium in particular are in big deficits, and that's what's been driving the market, and that's what's been driving the price. Now, one of the solutions to that is not some other strange metal, it's called platinum. So within our basket of metals, we are likely to see in the next few years, probably 18 months to 2 years, substitution from platinum back into gasoline. And the moment that you see that, you'll see a bit more of a balance between platinum, palladium and rhodium. We still think that prices are likely to remain strong, but perhaps over some time, perhaps rhodium and palladium prices coming off a bit, but platinum rising. So overall, the way we look at the basket price for the basket of metals that we produce, you should still see very strong prices for all the metals that we produce. And then it doesn't really matter if you give up a bit of price on palladium and rhodium and you gain that on platinum. So overall, we still see, given the demand for the metals and the uses that these wonderful metals have over jewelry, many industrial uses, the automotive sector, so right across that, and of course investment. So if you look at that suite of demand over all the metals that we produce, we still see that going forward, both in the short and the medium term, you see very strong demand for that basket of metals.
Even in the short term, the short to medium term, because the areas of use that you are describing, jewelry, industry, manufacturing, are areas that a lot of people are concerned about, given the coronavirus outbreak in China impacting that directly. So speak to me about your thoughts on the potential impact this could have on the mining industry, on Anglo Platinum, given China's dominant role in consumption of these metals.
So I think for us to understand that and to try to get a feel for that, you need to understand where the demand comes from. So the area of platinum that is most likely to be impacted in China is around jewelry. So about 60% of all platinum jewelry demand comes from China, and certainly in the first quarter of this year we expect to see some impact. And then in the car market in China, which is where the majority of palladium and rhodium go, it really does depend on what the buying patterns are for the first quarter and then the rest of the year. We're likely to see some impact there. I think if you look at the year, it's very, very difficult to say yet what the overall impact on the year will be. But I think you will see primarily in jewelry purchases in China in the first quarter some impact on us.
And just lastly, Chris, I mean, the conversation in South Africa nationally right now is still about transformation and inclusive growth. The president even named his State of the Nation address that of being a State of the Nation of inclusive growth. Your contribution as to how South Africa can start really realizing that, particularly in mining, transforming the industry for the better, but without offsetting much needed investments into the sector at the same time?
I think the best way for us all to remember the best inclusive growth we can generate is for companies to be profitable. When companies are profitable, they pay taxes, they pay royalties, and that's where the government gets a third of all that we produce. And that's the best way to start with inclusive growth. Inclusive growth is grow the economy, grow companies, enable them to be profitable. That's how the company gets money. When the government gets that money, they can invest perhaps more equally across society than individual companies can.
From us here, thanks so much for watching. It's bye for now.